Hey, thank you for joining us today, everyone. Today we're going to do things just a little bit different. It's going to be a little bit more of a sort of a tutorial on how you, what am I trying to say here? How you use Electrical Bid Manager to bid. I know we've called them hybrid. What was it? What was it, Brian? Hybrid. What are we calling them? Hybrid multifamily projects.
Right, like an
Um,
apartment
ap-
complex.
Apartments. It can be office buildings. What else? I guess
Could
maybe
be a
some condo
hotel with that kind of thing.
hotels. Yeah, hotels. That was it. That's the one I forgot. So there'll be plenty of tips here and there if you don't have Electrical Bid Manager now that you'll learn some things from. But we're going to be leaning a little bit more on how to do a bid, how to create a bid using Electrical Bid Manager for these types of projects. So on your right on YouTube Live, you have a chat. So if you're logged into YouTube, you can ask us questions, participate during this, and we'll answer most of your questions during this YouTube Live. Otherwise, I think that covers it right now. I think I'm going to hand it over to Brian. I think most of you know Brian Hoffelder by now. He does all of our training. So if you get our software and you purchase our training, he'll be helping you with your software. And he also participates a lot in the development of our software. And what else do you do, Brian? You do a lot.
Those are the two main things: the training
Yeah.
and the consulting and the participation in the development and fixing bugs and adding new features and all that.
Right. And I wanted to add something. The reason why we chose this topic is we've had customers asking about, well, how can I bid these types of projects with EBM? Like there must be a way to do it efficiently. And I've been talking to our sales reps and our support team, and this question does come up often enough to where it's like, hey, let's do a webinar about that, Brian. And I think we broke a record with the number of people that registered for this. So it's thumbs up, guys. Thanks for joining us today. So Brian, take it away.
I got it. So what makes these kind of projects unique and why I like to use the word hybrid is they're really a combination of residential and commercial. In a typical apartment complex, the actual apartment units are wired like a residential project with non-metallic boxes, Romex wiring. The lighting is more typical of residential, and you've got a lot of appliances and other equipment. But again, it's all done either with Romex or not typically with conduit wire in the actual unit. So one of the reasons we're doing this webinar is we need to make sure you know where those assemblies are in EBM. So I'm going to switch over to there for a minute. There we go.
Yes,
Okay.
excellent.
So I've already created a project called a Multifamily Resi Apartment. And just to give you a little bit of background, I set this up to have sections for the common area. Let's say there's a one bedroom, a two bedroom, and a one bedroom handicapped. I've already made some entries into the first three categories. So as we go through the little webinar here today, I'll make some entries into the handicap section. So the idea is you keep your entries separate. And then at the end, you can tell it there's 151 bedroom units or 10 one bedroom units or whatever the quantities are. You could also break it down separately. If you got a base bid and an alternate, you can put things separately into the alternate. Uh, it's exactly like columns and rows in a spreadsheet. So again, the main thing I want to show you here is how to get into those Resi assemblies because it's not part of the mainstream of the Takeoff. So if you go up to the top where it says Takeoff and go down to Resi Assemblies, I'll maximize it here. And then you'll see up in the very top right, it says one bedroom handicapped. So that's the type of unit I'm in now. Um, and you'll see down in the audit trail, I've already made some entries into the other types of units. So let's say I want to put some single pole switches into the handicapped unit. You just select that category. We'll do a 20 amp, we'll do 15 amp standard white, and we'll put 12 of those in. So if you look down here at the audit trail, when I make the entry, it includes Romex wiring. It sets a default of 20 feet per outlet or per assembly. You can adjust that on the fly. You can use 10 feet, 25 feet, whatever you like. It gives you staples. It gives you the non-metallic box. Gives you the switch, the plate. Gives you wire nuts, crimp connectors, and nail plates. So it gives you the entire wiring assembly um, for that for that device. Let's just do one more. I'm not going to do a complete takeoff here. That's not the purpose of this. Let's do a GFI receptacle. And again, we'll do 15 amp duplex white. And I'll say there's 6 of those in the handicapped unit. And again, down here at the bottom, you'll see the wire, the receptacle, the box, all the parts that go with it. The other part that's kind of unique here, again, especially to the guys who have just been using the commercial program, are the assemblies down here for the appliances. Those are under dedicated circuits. And then you've got everything from dishwashers to furnaces, washers, microwaves. Down here in the two-pole category, you've got dryers and air conditioning units. And these are kind of neat assemblies because if I put a microwave circuit in here, again, let's say I've got one microwave in my little apartment unit here. Down at the bottom here, it gives you all the parts for the microwave. When you do, let's say, a 40 amp two-pole air conditioning circuit, it not only gives you the wire, but it also even throws in a breaker there. If you look down here at the bottom, there's all the wire, there's the disconnect, uh, all the parts, there's the breaker that goes in. So it's a complete circuit all the way from the air conditioning unit. It gives you a piece of flex, it gives you the home run back to the panel, and it even throws a circuit breaker into the panel. So these are pretty complete. And the idea here would be that you go through each unit. Uh, right now I'm in the one bedroom handicapped. I've also made some typical entries into the one bedroom regular, the two bedroom, and there's also a common area. So the common area is where you would use the regular part of the commercial program. So if I have, I'll show you some entries I made here. We don't need to go through how to do it. So I'm just changing the sort in the audit trail here. And there's some entries I made into the common area. So let me go back to our little outline real quick. And again, for the commercial part of the takeoff, that's going to be mostly the main building and the common area. So anything you've got in the lobby, anything you've got in the building itself, maybe site work, maybe lighting for the building mechanical, for example. In a typical apartment, you're going to have some kind of heating, some kind of air conditioning, probably, but that's all within the unit. But the building itself is going to have some mechanical. Again, if there's a meeting area or a common area that people use, that's all part of the building mechanical. That can be wired separately. Typically, that part of the building will be wired with MC cable or conduit or both. So it's just a standard commercial takeoff to do the main building and the common areas. And again, I'll go back to my audit trail to show you an example. So do you see the audit trail here, Derek?
Yes.
Okay. So up here at the top, I told it to show me everything in the common area in the main building. You see some receptacles, you see some GFIs. A little bit further down, we've got an underground service. So there's some PVC conduit, there's some trenching. Here's a feeder from the main switchboard to the house panel. Again, that's part of the main building. When you get to the feeders that go to the units, those would still be part of the main building. So I'm going to put those under the main building. They're not part of the unit. If I have a feeder within the apartment, which I don't think that would be typical, but the feeder to each unit is part of the main building. We're going to have to take them off individually because they're all going to be different lengths. The feeder to unit 1A is going to be different to the feeder to 2A, etc. So again, it's still like a regular commercial takeoff. So what really is cool here is the ability to put multipliers in. At the end or in the audit trail, either place, you can tell it how many of each unit there are. So the common area, the main building, that's just going to stay at 1. But if you've got 100 of the one bedroom units and you've got 50 of the two bedroom units and you've got 10 handicapped units, you can apply those multipliers again either in the audit trail or the job extension. the job extension is really the easiest place to do it. So I'll show you when you go down to reports and you go to job extension. In this first window, which normally sorts by phase, I've set up the sections here so I can apply the multipliers here. At the bottom of this first window, I can hit quantity multipliers. I would leave the common area at 1. Again, let's just throw some numbers in here. Let's say there's 100 one-bedroom units, and there's 50 two-bedroom units, and there's 10 handicapped units. And then that's going to take care of multiplying all the parts in each of those sections when I go to the next step here. Now, I always like to give this its own name. So I'm going to hit Save As. I'm going to call it typical units with multipliers. Had a couple open items there. So there's the common area. And if you scroll down further enough, you'll see the subtotal for the common area. It's at 22,464 hours. And then it starts the one-bedroom unit. Again, the multipliers have been applied here. So that's why we've got 84,000 feet of 12.2. I took off 12.2. I probably should have taken off 14.2 for an apartment, but you can use either one. Kind of neat in the residential takeoff assemblies. If you choose a 15 amp device, it'll give you a 14 gauge wire. If you choose a 20 amp device, it gives you a 12 gauge wire. Then here's the two-bedroom unit. Again, the multipliers have already been applied. And then the last one is the handicapped unit. You see where it says one-bedroom handicapped. And then it gives you a grand total on the job. Now, again, the multipliers have already been applied. So when I go to job totals, I've got everything there. I need to put quotes in if I've got quoted items like lighting and gear on the main building. But you can see here, I've got the total hours for the job. Now, again, when I click on these hours, it'll sort it by however I've broken out the job. So I can see I've got 464 hours in the main building. I've got 1,700 hours for all of the one bedrooms, 1,100 and 100. Let me go back to our outline for just a second. So this is pretty typical with apartments. They're going to have, typical units. They might have 2 different floor plans. They might have a half a dozen different floor plans. But if you set up the sections as each of the different floor plans, we can put the multiplier in at any point you want to. This would also give you the opportunity to factor the labor, because the idea would be that, when you're doing the same thing over and over again, we've got 100 of those one-bedroom units. We would sure hope that by the time they're doing at least the second or third or fourth rendition of that one-bedroom unit, they're going to be picking up some speed. So in EBM, where you can do that is on the labor factor here. I can leave the common area no factor, but let's say I want to deduct 20% for the one bedroom and 15% for the two bedroom, and I won't. We'll deduct just 5% for the handicapped. So now all of those units are factored by the number I put in here to recognize the fact that repetition is going to give you some better productivity. I haven't seen any questions come up yet, Derek. Is everybody asleep? Or are they just so fascinated they don't know what to say, huh?
I don't know. We'll see. You're just being super concise. And I wanted to mention another reason why we wanted to do this is all the data that we're seeing is that these multifamily style construction projects are growing, especially this year. They're still increasing. In fact, I just saw a stat here that says that it's the highest. What's it say? It's a multi-family sector. Apartment units are projected to be completed. There's like 671,000 that are projected to be completed in 2024. This would represent the highest level since 1974. So that's another reason to do this, just to follow some trends that are happening out there.
And it's pretty visual. I travel a fair amount. Been to Nashville, I've been to Austin, even here in San Diego where I live. If you drive downtown, there's cranes up all over the place. They're not putting up office buildings; they're putting up apartment buildings, multifamily apartment buildings. I'm not that they're not doing any offices, but the vast
Right.
majority of the construction that's going in the downtown areas is multifamily apartments.
Yeah, it has to be leaning on the affordability side for.
Mhm. Productivity is a big issue, though. If you're going to be competing with the large contractors who do this a lot, they know that they get some productivity advantages. So you just can't go in and ignore that when you're bidding competitively. You've got to take that into account. Actually worked with the contractor several years ago here in San Diego, who did a lot of multifamily high-rise apartments, and they actually had separate crews. They had a crew that did the commercial main part of the building, just like your regular commercial electricians, and then they had a separate crew that did the wiring for the apartment units. Um, you might even hire somebody who's been doing tract homes and that kind of thing to do the apartment units because they're familiar with how to do jobs in Romex and plastic boxes and all that. And you try to get the commercial guys to do that, and they think they're in a different world. So that's one of the things you got to kind of gear up for on the multifamily residential is you need those residential electricians to be doing the wiring inside the units.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think that's about it, Derek, as far as the outline. Any other questions you thought of, or
We have a question.
sure?
Well, actually, Jeff looks like he might be posing a question, but Jeff, you can rewind this live, and you like drag the, I don't know, the play bar, the status bar on the video to go back to the previous sections, and always jump back to live if you want. This video will be here for a long time. I don't want to say forever, but for a long time on YouTube, so you can always go back and watch it. Um, Thrive Now asks, is the job set up as a commercial still?
Yes, good point. I should have mentioned that at the
Mhm.
beginning because when you set up a new job in EBM,
You've got a
job
prompt up.
file, what's that?
You have a prompt up. You have to okay.
Oh, I see it. Sorry. When you go to job file and new, the default is commercial. This residential is not the residential I was showing you. What we're really doing is using the residential assemblies that are in the commercial part of the takeoff. I would ignore that second option, and about the only place I even recommend using that is if you're doing like a tract home. If you're doing high-end residential, if you're doing multifamily residential like we're talking about today, then leave it on commercial, and that will let you get into that drop-down menu under takeoff for resi assemblies. And there's a bunch of assemblies here. I mean, like I said, there's all the appliances, there's smoke detectors, there's bath fans, a lot of stuff you don't see on commercial work. Um, and then even the regular outlets, again, they're all wired with Romex, they're all wired with plastic non-metallic boxes. It's got a pretty good sampling here.
All right. I have another question. Most efficient way to do lighting takeoffs for multifamily?
Again, I would still use the commercial takeoff because typically, unlike a custom home or even unlike a tract home, the lighting will be part of the electrical contractor's responsibility. So I would still use the lighting takeoff like you normally would on a commercial job. And, take off the fixture, do a recessed LED. The difference here is if you want to put wiring in for this recessed fixture and it's going into one of the units, instead of going to fixture widths, if you don't know about this feature, it's really nice. When you go to this little tab for conduit wiring cable, you can go to cable and you'll see Romex is down here. You can use 14.2, 12.2, whatever you want, and you can put in the number, the length of for each. My little light just died. Sorry about that. and then take off the quantity. So again, still use the residential takeoff. The only thing you're probably going to use the resi assemblies on is the actual devices, the appliances, and all that. But the lighting I would do through the regular commercial takeoff. Hope that answers that question.
Yeah, good question, Justin.
Good question. Yep.
William asks, where are chandeliers in EBM?
I don't think there are any chandeliers. There's a couple ways to handle that. You could always add them to the database. They actually, I think, are in the Resi Assemblies here. Let me look real quick. Let's do incandescent. I don't think I see chandeliers here. But again, if you're using the commercial takeoff, here's what I would do. Give it a designation like C. And then instead of picking something from the database or using one of the saved assemblies, just type in the description. Type in chandelier. And then for the wiring, when you go to select items, the thing about a chandelier is we need something a little bit different than a regular outlet box usually. So if you go down here to outlet boxes, there's some ceiling fan boxes that have a, that have a heavier duty box and a bracket there. And then you could add the Romex again, just like we did on the last fixture under conduit wiring cable. And let's do 12.2 on this. And we'll do 30 feet each. So what this does is, since you're typing in the description, you didn't use an existing item or assembly from the database, it's going to ask you for the labor. So I could say I want 2.5 hours on those and just go on from there. Again, you could add those to the database. The reason we didn't do that is I feel like chandeliers are usually kind of unique to the job. I could have a real basic chandelier that takes an hour or two. I could have something extravagant that's going to take 2 days. So if you do add them to the database, I would leave the labor checked as open. Show you that real quick. I'm going to do that. So if you add it here, couple things that you might do. You might have a small, a medium, and a large chandelier. If you want to leave it real generic, leave the labor units open. That way it'll ask you on each time you take this off what labor to use for it. And again, it would typically be a quoted item. Might even be owner furnished. That would be fairly typical for chandeliers, at least on a custom home. On a multifamily building like this, it's something that may be selected by the architect or the engineer at some point, and you wouldn't necessarily include it in your bid. So leave the labor open if you're going to add it to the database. I don't think there's any need to do that. Just type it in on the fly. Small chandelier, and then it'll ask you for the labor when you take it off.
All right. You got more on that, Brian?
No, that was it.
All right. We have a question. Is Romex typically used in all multifamily buildings for the dwelling units, or do some jurisdictions require MC?
It could be either. I would say most of the time the residential units, but again, that's going to be a code thing and a jurisdiction thing on what part of the project is wired with Romex or MC cable or conduit. If you're working in the city of Chicago, anybody who's familiar with that, everything is in conduit, not MC cable. It's everything is in conduit. They have to use metal boxes. So I guess the good thing there is it's more like a commercial job. So if you know how to wire a commercial job, and when you're in the city of Chicago, it's everything is basically commercial. But again, to answer the question, it could be either. So you certainly have to know the jurisdiction, and it's very common for the units to be wired in Romex. I think a lot of the codes get into things like above a certain floor, they have to be wired uh, one or the other, and below a certain floor, you can wire them differently. So sometimes it's even a matter of you might have both options in the same building, depending on where the apartment unit is located.
Would that data be in the bid request or the
No, I don't
no?
think it might be. It might be in the specifications of the job
Mm,
that say everything on the fourth floor up has to be wired with a certain way. But a
okay.
lot of the time, you would just have to know what the requirements are in the jurisdiction that you're working in.
All right. And Justin had an add-on question that I think would probably be better for a different, like a support or training session. Can you go over process of importing OST and show how to then put into correct subcategories? Like,
And I don't know if he's talking about OST or plan script. It doesn't matter. Um, and it doesn't matter when you're setting up the job. Let me go back to that job I was in before. Whether you're doing electronic takeoff or you're doing it manually, after you take it off by hand. Let's see. Go back to the multifamily. I didn't realize it popped it up on a different screen. Okay, settings. So when I set up this job, I set up the sections as the different breakdowns. So when you're in EBM and you tell it you want to take off a receptacle, whether it's a residential receptacle or commercial receptacle, as long as you've told it what section you're in, up here at the top right, it'll record that correctly or appropriately when you do the electronic takeoff. It'll know what section you're in, and when you bring it back to EBM, it'll put it in that section. So there's really no difference in the setup for doing electronic takeoff. As long as you've got it set up in EBM and you do your takeoff electronically, it's gonna put it in the appropriate categories as you do it. Yeah, you have to do it separately, of course. If you're taking off a one-bedroom apartment, you gotta do that separately from the two-bedroom apartments and anything else. But that's all controlled by EBM. Has really nothing to do specifically with the electronic takeoff part of it.
Can you apply labor factors in the audit trail or just in the totals tab?
That's a good question. I'm not sure I know. I know you can do it in the totals tab. So I'm in the audit trail. I know you can apply the multiplier in the audit trail, but let's just see about. I'm kind of thinking you can't. So let's say I want to put a labor factor on everything in the common area. Well, let's do it. That's not a good example. We'll do a one bedroom. I'll go down here and I'll highlight everything in the one bedroom. And I don't think that's not going to do it. I don't think there's a way to do it in the audit trail. I'd have to do some thinking, some research on that. I've always, I don't know why you would need to do it any place other than the job extension. I mean the job totals. Um, I know you can do it when you multiply. This is probably a better way to do it, or another way to do it. When you're in the job extension, you can do an extension on just one of the sections, and you could put a labor factor here of minus 20%. And that would apply it to the one bedroom units. But really the better place to do it is the job totals, because then you've got the totals on everything. Right here. And you can see it's got the factors I put in a little while back when we were talking about it. So it shows you the factors on each of these. I can't off the top of my head think of a reason you'd want to do it in the audit trail or the job extension rather than here, but that's something we could give some discussion too, if there's a reason not to do it here.
Yeah, it could be a feature request we add and discuss internally and with our customers to see if that's something that.
It might be a way to do it now. I just have to give it some thought. Like I said, I haven't seen or haven't come up with a reason why not to do it here.
Gotcha. So no, not at this time that we,
Not that I know of, but
unless it's a hidden feature that we forgot about.
or there's just a different way to do it.
All right. Derek asks, why is the labor for 12.2 Romex more in commercial than in res?
That goes back to the comment I made earlier about residential electricians versus commercial electricians. I think to me, it's not even an argument that a commercial electrician is not going to run Romex as quickly as a residential. So that's why the labor unit in the residential Romex is much lower than it is for if you do Romex in a commercial part of the Takeoff.
All right. Excellent. Well, a lot of good questions. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. So obviously people have been looking at some of the variables here. That's good.
Yep.
And the thing is, it really is a hybrid. You have to be looking at both parts of the job, and there's different factors that come into play for both parts. Not only the type of wiring, but the way you factor it and the labor values, labor units, and all that come into play a little bit differently when you've got kind of two types of jobs going on at the same time.
All right. Well, just a quick reminder, we'll be here for a few more minutes if you have questions, but please hit the thumbs up or like button and subscribe to our channel. It helps get the word out to more people. The more people like our videos and subscribe to our channel, the more YouTube puts us in front of others that are like you. And if you subscribe, then I think you'll get an alert when we post new videos, and we have plans to keep creating new webinars and new videos. So keep a lookout for those. I don't know, Brian, did you want to mention anything? I know you've been doing a lot of on-site trainings. You want to talk about that just while we wait for some other questions that might come in?
Yeah, I've got pretty busy month coming up here. Next week, I'm headed up to the Northwest. Got a training session in Seattle and then another one in Yakima, Washington, which is a little bit out in the away from the main area. And then I've got another one later in February. I'm going out to Florida to work with a customer. So that's excuse me, something you can check into if you've got maybe like the guy in Florida is hiring a brand new estimator, and he wants me to spend a couple days with him to get him up to speed as quickly as possible. And both of the contractors I'm going up to see in Washington, they've got I think 5 or more users, and a lot of the time. A lot of the time, what happens in those situations, you've got a couple of brand new people, maybe a couple of experienced people, and we need to do some combination, or we need to do some training to make sure everybody's up to speed, make sure everybody's on the same page. May need to do a little bit of customizing to make sure that we've got all the different types of assemblies that company is working with. And so those on-site sessions are really the best way to get everybody on the same page and to make sure that everybody's getting the best use out of the program.
Yep. Excellent. Yeah. So if you want to learn more about that, you can go to our website or give us a call. Some of the contact information is here, or you can email us, of course. We have another question here for you, Brian. How would you estimate the hours an inspector would need for multifamily?
How would estimate the hours for what?
An inspector. Code inspector, I suppose.
Yeah, that's definitely something you would put under non-productive if you're going to throw that in there. I'm not sure I can give you a good answer. If it's more than a couple of hours, that's a whole different scenario. And I know that sometimes the whole inspection process can be pretty different from job to job, and and that kind of thing. So I guess I'd have to look at that as a unique thing based on your experience and the kind of jobs you're doing and the kind of inspections you're working with. But let me show you where that would go in EBM. You could either put it as a non-productive labor. It's really not the best place to put it because it's not your people that you're paying for. I would put that under direct job expenses. And that there's not a category here already for inspections. You don't see one. You could just add it here.
There is.
Oh, right there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You could put in, maybe it's going to take, maybe you want to allow for 4 hours. And again, you don't typically pay the inspector. Put it in the wrong place, didn't I?
Yeah.
But you may want to account for the time for your employees or your time that you have to. How come I keep putting it in the wrong place? There,
That's not important.
There we go. So that this will be accounting for your time for working with the inspector.
Oh.
I still have it in the wrong place. Why does it keep jumping on me?
Yeah, you've got in the right place. You just don't have the, yeah.
There we go.
All right, William, if you have a follow-up to that, hopefully that answered your question. Let's see. What about pricing cost updates in system? Here's the follow-up to that question. How current is it? Wire cost is constantly changing along with our other commodities. I'll start this one, Brian. So we have a software service called Epic Pricing that we have a team of people that manage it, maintain it, update it. What is it, about 30 years old now? We're pretty efficient at it, and the commodities is something we've put a lot of emphasis on over the years, especially during COVID and all the time. It's just sometimes it changes a lot more than others, and I think it's still changing quite a bit right now. The commodities, wire, conduit. We track that, and part of our Epic pricing, we have a Duo dynamic update option that's an add-on. So normally we update all of our pricing once a week, so that would include the commodities. But our Duo add-on gives you almost daily. It's whenever we see prices shift just a little, we send an update to you, and it comes via the internet, kind of like an antivirus definition thing where you're constantly getting updates to eliminate viruses. Our pricing service, whenever things change or you need an update, it sends it to you dynamically and comes right into your Epic and feeds into EBM. When you launch EBM, you'll see a little price update status bar go across the screen, and that's pulling in your commodity prices into EBM. I think we're averaging about 2.5 updates a week on that, some weeks more. So I would say pretty accurate. And Brian, you want to touch on what you might want to do by contacting your local supplier to verify before you submit the bid?
Yeah. One of the things you can do in EBM, let me just switch back real quick. One of our sales reps had a little comment on this the other day. I don't want job extension. I want item cost report. Is I can tell EBM to sort the job by price. And then what it does, this is the item cost report. It'll give me the job sorted by the highest dollar amount. So the extended price is the total. So his comment was, get a current price from your couple of suppliers or whoever your normal suppliers are on those top 5 items, and let Epic take care of the rest. Maybe if you want to go to 10 items, that would be more than adequate. But it's those top 5 or 10 items that make or break the job. I've got 3/8 1-hole straps here. I don't really, if I get a great deal on my 1-hole straps, that's not going to impact the job. But if I'm not accurate on this job on the 500 MCM wire or the 3/0 wire, those first 5 or 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 items, that's what makes or breaks the job. So I would just get pricing, current pricing, send them a request for a quote on those 5 or 10 items, and see if they'll hold the price for 30 days or more, and use those prices in your bid. They could be higher or lower. Typically we want to see if they can get a little bit better pricing so we can be more competitive.
Mhm.
And if the quantities are big enough, then they might give you a little better pricing than you would normally see if you're buying a couple 100 feet of wire over the counter.
Sean said, agreed. The make or break comment.
Yep. I know people that all the time they take the entire job, send it out for a pricing quote. The supplier prices everything on the job. Takes them a lot of time. I'm sure they're not happy
Yeah,
about doing it. Send it back to the contractor, and the estimator goes in and adjusts the prices on all those items. Well, that's a lot of
on every
time. The other
job.
thing is, it's also an opportunity to make errors. You know, you 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 plug in the wrong price, and you may mess up the job on your own. Um,
Yeah, and the epic price updates that come into EVM give you an idea. Like it's a good benchmark that we provide,
yep.
pretty accurate typically. And uh, if you get a off price from your supplier, you can kind of go, huh, wonder why I'm getting this price from my supplier. Because on commodities, it probably doesn't happen that often.
It depends. I mean, if you get a particular supplier who's really aggressive in the wire market, then they might
Right.
be trying to buy some business there, or they've got a better discount because of their volume or whatever. I mean, it does happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything
Yeah.
else? Is that about it?
Yeah, that's about it. Sean just agreed that this is something that he's done in the past. Oh, it hurts for sure. Yeah, I think that's it. Um, yep. So yeah, if you have any other questions, feel free to give us a call, please. And you could also go to at the beginning of the chat, I posted a link to our support page on our website where you can create a support case, and our support team will get back to you to go over any extra questions you might have. If you are looking to ask questions about buying our software, then just call us, email sales@visioninfosoft.com, and um, one of our team will answer all your questions for you and get you set up. All right. I think that's about it, Brian. Everybody's saying
Alrighty.
goodbye. So we're out of here. Thanks for being here, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.